So why is it that the government is now releasing this what used to be classified information to the general public? I mean, does
Right.
anyone have maybe some theories?
Yeah, some theories. I don't know. I saw something else, and I didn't really read it on my Facebook page. It
Mhm.
was talking about how Russia was saying that basically America needs to go ahead and tell its people about UFOs, or it's going to tell its people.
Hmm.
Mm.
Um, I don't know. I'm kind of up in the air about the whole alien UFO thing.
Mhm.
One thing I can say though is that there are people who definitely seem to be alien on this planet. You know what I'm saying? In the sense that they don't get along with sunlight and they're very vicious and I mean you don't mess up something that's yours and that belongs to you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
And so if you're messing up the earth and doing things like that, maybe you're alien to it and you don't
Right.
belong here. So when we're talking about aliens coming from another place, maybe it's more symbolic to something like that than
Right.
than a UFO from
And,
space.
and
But
the
who
fact that
knows?
there's this discussion about colonizing Mars
Mm.
Yeah.
in 2020, 2022, you have to ask yourself, should we redefine what an alien is? It's certainly not someone that crossed over into the United States from, Mexico. Those
Right.
aren't the aliens because they were here before the colonizers.
Right.
So it's really interesting.
Right.
Mhm.
And, I mean, it could be more of like you said, they were developing technologies to spy on people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, that was way back then. Even when you look at NSA or FBI tactics as far as tapping your line, right? Before they used to have to go straight to your line and put something on. Nowadays, it goes through the switch. You make the phone call, NSA, and your carrier,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, maybe it's just that they're letting you know because they're not hiding anything. You just got the I can't remember his name. I'll find the article. But the NSA or he's the CIA guy basically went to a hackers convention
Mm-hmm.
after lying to Congress and then having to admit to Congress that he did tell a lie. He goes to this hacker convention
Mm-hmm.
and he's trying to speak to these guys and then they're like, "Dude, you're a liar." And he's like, "No, I didn't lie." And they're like, "We just
Yeah, I
heard the
saw that.
congressional speech. What do you
Wow.
mean you're not a liar?"
Right.
So, there's a lot of things coming out. So maybe it's something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We have any more current events?
Yeah, I got one.
I'll bring them up.
This one kind of changed of pace. Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick
I don't know if y'all heard the.
spit that hot verse, right?
Yeah, it was a peace verse. It
Although he
wasn't
said
like the.
He was the king of New York and not the king of LA. So
No, he said both
Okay,
coasts.
both
Yeah,
coasts.
he
Okay,
said both
fine, so-
coasts. Basically, the king of the world, really.
Mm.
But I'm gonna read one little line that stood out to me.
I think Papoose killed him. Personally.
He said, "I'm usually homeboys with the same ends." I'm not gonna say it, but I'm rhyming with. But this is hip hop. Them ends should know what time it is, and that goes for Jermaine Cole, Big Crit, Wale, Pusha T, Meek Mill, ASAP Rocky, Drake, Big Sean, J Electron, Tyler, Mac Miller. I got love for y'all, but I'm trying to murder y'all, basically.
Mm.
So I thought this was great, not necessarily because it was like the greatest lyrical, I guess, barrage put together in hip hop history or anything like that. But I thought it was great because it was like
In recent
You do-
hip-hop history.
exactly. But the thing is, these dudes is like kind of all at the same level. It's like kind of like they're decent with their lyrics, but they don't really bring it to that next level.
right.
Him basically calling them out now forces them if you're gonna come back.
You have to come with some fire.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So the lyrical expectations are going to be a lot higher now. So that
Right.
that should ultimately lead the game back to more of a lyrical type of situation. So we'll see.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
We'll see,
Hopefully.
you know?
Right. I mean, because we talked about the fact that in the United States literacy is extremely low, especially among young people.
Mhm.
And I mean, if those of you who are into hip hop, if you go back and you read some of the lyrics that were written, let's say in the late '80s, depending on the artist, of course, you'll notice that literacy in rap or hip hop, it is kind of been dumbed down or watered down. So it seems like it's not being used as a tool of education. Like I said, I've used lyrics from certain artists in my classroom, and as soon as the artist starts rhyming, a student would look at me and be like, "I'm lost," you know. So
I can't follow along. Huh?
Yeah, it's true indeed. So you know, we have to ask ourselves, just as creative people, creative Black people, when people are listening to your lyrics, what exactly are you trying to teach them, if anything? You know.
Another thing that stood out in his rhyme was that you know, he basically said, you know, I'm gonna go back to wearing white tees and, you know,
the basics. Huh?
So it basically means for anyone who's gonna come back at him, you can't really go about I got this kind of gear, I got these chains, I got this and that, because he's like, I don't really care about that. You know what I mean? So it's gonna be purely based on your lyrics. So it'd be interesting to see, you know, the backlash. But there was one rapper, Joel Ortiz, who wasn't actually mentioned in the rap. I thought his response was pretty good.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, it was decent.
It was cool.
I haven't heard it.
You haven't?
I gotta check it out.
Oh man, yeah. Again, one of those things that came up on my Facebook thing, and I heard the whole first thing, and that was dope. But Kendrick did kind of shine, a little more than everyone else.
Yeah, he crapped.
And then you had
it.
Cassidy.
Cassidy.
Yeah, people slept on Cassidy.
Yeah, but they always sleep on him though.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, like you said though, this may kind of be like a reset in hip hop, right? I mean, you know, they tried to make it something other than its own self, but hip hop, you can't take out the battling part of hip hop, right? And so that deals with competition. And so based on that, like he said, I'm bringing it back to white tees and, you know what I'm saying, the basics.
Yeah.
So you gotta come with some lyrical stuff, the basics of hip hop. Back when people were back out in the park and didn't have a whole lot of flaws. So it's just you gotta come with something creative, right?
Right. I like the fact that you use the word reset. You know what I mean? 'Cause it says, you know, something that's been off track for a long time.
I think so.
And I mean, if we don't have that battle content in hip hop, that competitive content in hip hop, then hip hop is just merely being, or rap is being used as just, you know, a form of entertainment, and that's it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No stimulation there.
True indeed, and that's what makes it so dry, man. Some of you artists out there, I don't know. It's kind of like what Wise Intelligence said from Poor Righteous Teachers. He said, you know, a lot of you rappers, when people go into your house and you're showing off your house and all the things that you have, one of the things he pointed out in this comment was that a lot of you artists don't have a library in your house. You have everything else in your house, but books to study, man.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking of all the MTV cribs that I've watched, and I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Dude's got 10 cars and
DVD collection.
Yeah, look at all my, you know what I'm saying? Multiple DVDs. I got TVs all over my stuff, but no one's got any books.
Right.
Not even magazines. I don't think I've seen it.
I don't even think y'all have composition books with the lyrics, because maybe some other people are writing your lyrics.
That's another show.
Yeah. So let me hit you guys with this current event. We got Homeland Security in the news for something other than buying up all the guns and ammunition so that no one else can get some. They got this new ad that's coming off the back of, you know, they just recently stopped the whole stop and frisk thing, which illegally put a lot of people in the system who wouldn't have been in the system. And as we talked about before, once you get caught up in that jail system, you're now, slavery is legal for you in America as far as the Constitution is concerned. Right? So off the backs of that, where you have black and brown people who were indiscriminately or disproportionately being stopped and frisked versus Caucasians, you now have this whole see something, say something. And they got kind of in the news because they were using a sexy brown skinned lady to kind of push to the people that, hey, you know, if you see something that's weird, that's awkward, say something. But it kind of has a twist to it to where it's like the brown person snitching on the white people. Right? And so how I said earlier, as far as the separation of the people, you know, some people may be a little upset after the whole stop and frisk and what led to that. So now you may have some false reports of, you know, white people doing some things that maybe they weren't doing just because some dudes may be a little upset. Right? And so I think this really sets the tone for kind of a bad scene.
Right. I mean, because as long as we are visibly divided, I mean, being divided, whether we see it or not, is not healthy. And we always advocate that, we try to unify, the members of the human family.
Right.
But one thing that people need to remember is that the people that are behind all these laws, and I'm not talking about the police or the people you see walking around in uniform. I mean the policymakers. They're black, brown, they're Caucasian, and it's just a mentality that we're trying to change in people.
Right, right, no doubt. And like you mentioned, those people, a lot of times these people are not affected by the laws that they're passing.
Right.
And so they subjugate you to things that they themselves will not subjugate themselves to.
Mm-hmm.
And mostly because no one's calling them. I mean, do you know who your congressman is?
Mm-hmm.
Your legend, do you know who to call when something happens that you want to complain about versus just posting it on Facebook, right?
Sure indeed.
So that's a big thing. Education, man.
Word.
All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and get into the questions for today's show? And one of the gods is going to bless you with the questions we're focusing on.
Yeah, indeed. So the first question is, what constitutes a third world country? Meaning a definition and what exactly is a third world country. What resources are being exploited by Western powers from third world countries? That's a great one. How are people affected by the exploitation of third world countries' natural resources? How did the third world countries become third world countries? And what are some examples of this process, past and present? And what is globalization and neoliberalism? Wow, what is that? Yeah.
Thank you, God. And the references for today?
Yeah, peace. So we got Life and Debt. Second one is from a website called resourceinvestor.com. And that one's dealing with a carpet treatment promise for minors in the Dominican Republic, which I was just there not too long ago, and I got some stuff we're gonna build about. We got Blood Coltan. This one comes from nationsonline.org. Basically, one world, third world countries. The new rules of the world found on top documentaries. Another great one that this guy right here put me up on is called Bling, the Consequences and Repercussions. You can see that on YouTube, right?
Yes, sir.
Check that out on YouTube. And Love and Capitalism.
Oh, wow, boy, who was the director? It was Michael Moore for that.
Oh, well, there you go.
We were talking about Mr. Moore the other day. That'll be another story.
Right.
Okay, so the first part of this show is titled The Origin of the Third World. So I wanted to pass over the definition of what the third world is according to the Encyclopedia of World Geography. So
okay, so yeah, this is a very interesting situation here, but basically it's third world nations tend to have economies dependent on the developed countries and are generally characterized as poor, with unstable governments and having high rates of population growth, illiteracy, and disease. So
sounds like certain parts of Los Angeles County to me.
Man.
We're gonna get to that though.
Oh yeah.
All right. So in addition to that, we're just gonna talk a little bit about how the exploitation of third world countries, or what leads to a third world country, has a lot to do with what's known as the manifest destiny. So I wanted to give that over to Jaquil because he wanted to expound and elaborate on that. It's an interesting concept, God.
Man, yeah, manifest destiny is deep. So basically, when the forefathers of America initially first came over to America, they started in like New York and East Coast area, and then at a certain point, someone kind of was like, you know what? I think we just need to go ahead and take all the rest of this too, from the east to the west coast, and that was basically manifest destiny. Someone a group of people had it in their mind that belonged to them, and no matter by what means, they were going to acquire what belonged to them. So, keyword, no matter by what means, they were going to acquire what belonged to them, right? So when you talk about acquiring something that you feel belongs to you, although you make treaties, contracts, you may not honor those because you're like, well, it was mine in the first place. So now that I have it back, well, why do I need to honor the contract for? I.e., Indians and other peoples of Americas that were, subjugated to contract with people with America, the corporation,
Right?
And
America, the corporation,
and got screwed with that. But the actual name Manifest Destiny didn't come around into play until 1845 by a newspaper journalist, John O'Sullivan, and then it didn't really kick in until shortly thereafter, around December, when they used it as far as acquiring Texas or the annexation of Texas.
Wow, that's really deep because conceptually speaking, when I think about Manifest Destiny, it just reminds me of one of the concepts in the Bible where it teaches this idea about predestiny. So where when you're born, you're predestined to do something specific.
Right.
So I think that's really interesting because we know that Europeans, of course, they adopted these so-called Christian values in the Christian doctrine. So not only did they feel like they were entitled to do what they were doing, like you said, but they felt that it was something that they were supposed to fulfill, even though there was a lot of bloodshed and displacement of original people that they did in their
whatever it was there.
Killing a buffalo and all of that.
Right.
Yeah, whatever.
For the record, the so-called Native Americans weren't the ones killing buffalo like that. They were actually hiring, the government would hire different people and basically give them money to go to the West and first and foremost kill the Native Americans. But when they realized there was so many, they just started killing the buffalo because, that they were dependent on the buffalo for their survival.
Right.
So once they wiped them out with the barbed wire and those types of things, that led to them dying off at higher rates. So,
right. They basically sieged them.
Right.
Stopped their food sources.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said they hired these people. So one thing we do know is that they called what is now called America the New World, right? So it was new to people over there, but it wasn't new to the people over here. But not everyone over there could afford to come to the New World. You see what I'm saying? So you have aristocrats, right? Like George Washington, right? He was a commander in the British Army, and then he's in America. Well, what was he doing in America? He came to get stuff for his people, right? Not his people, but necessarily his family in specific, right? So he comes to the New World because he has all the money to come over here, whereas your average Joe Blow who's working over there doesn't have money to come to the New World for that new opportunity, right? So they come over and colonize it, and what we now have is America.
Right. Then the poorer people come on the second or third wave.
You need someone to work for you and
Irish,
stuff like that.
Italians,
cheap labor. So you bring in immigrants.
Right.
And America has been doing that, consistently through the years, right?
Right.
The Irish and then...
Or they just did it 1 minute ago.
Right?
We'll tell you next week. All right. So how does this relate to the spread of Christianity? I mean, the Manifest Destiny, the old world versus the new world.
Well, Jaquil touched on it, but I think a lot of it has to do with, a lot of the tactics that they used to justify them going and slaughtering these original people were that they were savage and uncivilized, and they needed Christianity to clean themselves up.
Pocahontas.
Exactly. So, even the individuals who didn't necessarily agree with what was being done, they agreed with that Bible wholeheartedly. So, if you were swift enough to use the Bible to convince people that it says this in the Bible, we have to do this, it's Manifest Destiny,
right?
Then it was you were more apt to get the job done.
Right.
And just to fast forward, since we're talking about capitalists and hate groups such as the early colonizers of America, what comes to mind is the Ku Klux Klan. And that in the Bible it says that when a man is hung on a tree, he's cursed, right? So that was one of the things that the Ku Klux Klan was successful in doing. They made black people appear to be cursed people, and the fact that they hung us from trees was supposed to symbolize that, they were fulfilling something in the Bible. Like we were these evil and cursed people.
Wow.
So it goes pretty deep. In terms of missionaries and their exploits all around the world, I mean, I'm not going to use curse words, but just think about when the brother makes this next point, think about the missionary style and what Europeans did to original people.
Ooh.
So I'm going to let you build on that, guy.
That's powerful. The missionaries, basically, they go in and they soften the people up. So, before you bring your military in and your larger force of people, you send your missionaries. They come in and they basically convert some people over to the Christianity, and they start to really teach that this is the proper way to do things. A lot of people don't accept it, but some do. More than likely, they were going after the women and children first and foremost. And then over time, decades pass, you're going to be effective. So, basically you numb the people up with that religion. Now when the military and other groups come in, it's a lot easier to take over that land and take the resources from the people.
Right. What's the quote with it's always on Facebook, they got the Indian guy and he says, when they first came, we had all the land and they had the Bible. He goes, then we closed our eyes, we opened our eyes, we had the Bible and they had all the land.
Wow.
That's real. That's
Man.
real.
And I think we had established on the show where we talked about the scientific nature of the Caucasians' aggression on the planet. At least it's been a couple of weeks now.
About 3 weeks ago.
Thank you. 3 weeks ago. We did say that 3 things that colonizers or the Europeans used to exploit our people was religion, guns, and I believe it was alcohol, which should also be
drugs,
considered
alcohol,
drugs.
opium, those types of things.
So, it's still relevant. Karl Marx said that religion is the opiate of the people, and it's always meant just to keep you asleep.
That's funny you said that, because, just the other day, within a block down the street from here, from one main street to the next, well, not even to the next main street, to about 3, side streets, you have, I think I counted 7 churches, 3 liquor stores, in just that small stretch, less than a quarter of a mile. And this is predominantly, black and brown area that, I'm living in. So, it's deep, because the practice is still being seen today.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So you would think maybe the church should be selling some liquor and the liquor store should be selling some Bibles, right?
Well, you have your communion. Right? And they used to have New Testaments in the liquor stores. I don't know about nowadays. But yeah, I remember those once upon a time. Far away.
Not to take the show in a different direction. When we talked about vaccines and communicable diseases, one of the things that we shared was the fact that some of the churches had forewarned people not to share the communion cup because of the prevalence of I think during that time it was I can't remember which one it was. It was one of the flus that they brought out. They bring out so many, man. But in any case,
all on record is being engineered and created.
We can't keep up with them.
Wow.
So how about why don't we go ahead and take a couple of minutes break, and we're going to resume the show about the third world and the exploitation of the third world. Peace.
Peace.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace. Jaquil Nabsallah.
Peace, Joel.
And before we went out on break, we were talking a little bit about the exploitation of third world countries and what exactly sets the stage for countries classified as third world countries being exploited. So we just wanted to keep it moving with an interesting discussion. I would ask all of you to Google speech by Comandante Marcos of the Zapatistas Army titled The Sixth Declaration of the Selva La Condona by the Zapatista Army of National Liberation.
That's a great accent, bro.
Yeah, I'm like,
I'm trying, brother.
Damn, this guy right here.
We going to Mexico, see some pyramids, unless some fool tears them down like they did in Belize.
Right.
That's another thing, huh? So in any case, I was just going to read a little bit about how globalization and what's known as neoliberalism is viewed by what would be classified as the grassroots people on the planet Earth. So these would be the indigenous people in any area. And this is a really interesting view. If you read a little bit about the Zapatistas, they're a group of people. They're classified as peasants, but really they're indigenous people in a place called Chiapas, Mexico. And at some point, the Mexican government, along with multinational corporations, decided that they needed that particular tract of land or piece of land that the Zapatista people lived on.
Manifest destiny. It's
True indeed.
Yeah, you're still going to take that.
Right.
True indeed. So as a response to that, right, aggression, they took up arms, massed themselves, and put together a standing army.
That's right. They had a little bit of manifest destiny of
indeed.
their own.
Indeed. So, of course, we don't advocate any type of armed struggle, but we do understand. Right? So these were his words. This is a really long speech. And again, I would encourage you all to read it. But Marcos talks a little bit about neoliberalism and globalization in what I'm going to read. It says here that then in neoliberal globalization, the great capitalists who live in the countries which are powerful, like the United States, want the entire world to be made into a big business where merchandise is produced like a great market. A world market for buying and selling the entire world and for hiding all the exploitation from the world. Then the global capitalists insert themselves everywhere in all the countries in order to do their big business, their great exploitation. Then they respect nothing, and they meddle wherever they wish, as if they were conquering other countries. That is why we Zapatistas say that neoliberal globalization is a war of conquest, manifest destiny, of the entire world, a world war, a war being waged by capitalism for global domination. Sometimes that conquest is by armies who invade a country and conquer it by force, but sometimes it is with the economy. In other words, the big capitalists put their money into another country or they lend it money, but on the condition that they obey what they tell them to do. And they also insert their ideas with the capitalist culture. That's an interesting phrase. The capitalist culture. I want to finish these last few words. With the capitalist culture, which is the culture of merchandise, of profits, of the market. So what is the capitalist culture?
Wow. Wait. Say that last part again, please.
It says, with the capitalist culture, which is the culture of merchandise, of profits, of the market.
Wow. The culture of merchandise, of profits, of the market.
That's how it classifies neoliberalism, or what we come to know as globalization.
Wow.
So
Well,
how
I
do
think-
y'all see that?
I think
That's heavy.
for those who didn't catch the propaganda show that we did, you could see how things started to switch early, 1900s, maybe going more into like the 30s, 40s, and 50s, where they started to use media to influence people to think that they needed certain different things. Like Jaquil was saying, as it relates to the cars coming out every year. Prior to that, people would have cars for like 50 years, 60 years, pass the car down to their children,
right.
their grandchildren. So they started making products that didn't last as long, so that people
Plan
would
schedule maintenance.
exactly.
Yeah, I
So
think
people
GM.
would, right. So people would purchase new products more often, and then that obviously influences the the state of capitalism because now we can continue to make new things, so people continue to buy these new things and have 10 cars and 10 microwaves and 10
Right.
vacuum cleaners, all these different things that they don't really need, but based on what they see, they feel like they do need it, so
Yeah, right. I mean, you think like some people buy a car and then they make those payments 4 years, 5 years, whatever it may be, and then they turn around and go buy another new car, and it's like, well, damn, you were just out of, what I mean, you were living tight with that
Right.
money and you paid it off and you're finished. Why do you want to start over again? Right?
and that's the cultural aspect.
Right. Yeah, exactly, and that's the culture
Yeah.
of capitalism.
Wow. So it's basically this idea of, and it has already come out on our show. It was the show where we were talking about Easter, where we were talking about consumerism, where Drew and all of us, we built extensively on the fact that greed comes into play, and people tend to mistake that for, oh, I really need that. So, if someone that was told to me that living in this type of culture, it's important that we determine what we need as opposed to what we want. Because sometimes what we're doing in an effort to get what we want, we may be exploiting people in that effort.
Right. Manifest destiny.
There it is. Hey, man, that's the key word. I want you to get a tattoo of that. Manifest destiny. To remind you what the God is saying.
Right. And then when you think about capitalism, for it to function, people need to be buying new things. So if everyone decided today that they're not going to buy anything,
wow,
the country would fall just like that.
Just
Just like that. So you almost have to have the constant barrage of media saying that you need this, that, and the third for you to actually be out there buying things, because if it wasn't there, people would realize, like, why do I need, 10 pair of shoes when I can only wear one at a time?
Right.
So.
Right. And I mean, I totally get it. I was having a conversation with some people I train martial arts with, and I think we were kind of talking about just people having excess of money. And I was like, yeah, I basically know why I don't have a lot of money. And they're not necessarily on the same mindset as I am as far as, what God is. But I was like, so my higher self, that little thing in the inside, the angel and devil on your shoulder, whatever you want to classify that as, that thing already knows that if I were to get a large amount of money, I'd do dumb stuff like that too. Right? Like, go to the mall in my boxers and a tank top and go buy a new outfit for the day because I got a lot of money. When you have a lot of money, you can do dumb stuff like that, right? That's the privilege of living in America. You have a lot of money, you can be ignorant and do ignorant things. And that culture, that's the culture of capitalism, but that breeds kind of ignorance. And like, did you hear about Oprah Winfrey getting upset that someone wouldn't show her? I forgot the exact ticket on that purse, but it was a very expensive purse, and she went off the barrel as far as like, well, why won't you show me? Do you know who I am? Da, da, da. And the lady was like, look, I don't care who you are. First of all, I don't speak English, so I don't really know what you're saying. But this is protocol for the store that I need to go get this person to open up the thing to show you the purse. Lady, I don't know what you're on. And she later on apologized and recanted for doing that. But, I mean, again, you have someone who gives away cars to everyone in her studio, like almost daily, right? Like, hey, here, have a Mercedes, and, here, have a brand new house on me. And she's giving away all these things, and she's had, she's in the $1 billion club as far as, like, she's one of the richest women out there in America. And so, along with having that money, you think you're in manifest destiny. You think you're entitled to certain things.
Right, and I mean, we benefit so much from all these billionaires and millionaires, don't we?
Oh, totally.
I mean, I feel such a sense of security knowing that prominent black people have all of this money to spend. Our communities look great. So, without being sarcastic, we're all going to build about Africa as classified as a third world country. I think it's really important for us to have a brief discussion about apartheid and remind people that specifically South Africa, outside of South Africa and several different countries within that region, that would also include Angola and Namibia. So, we all came of age during the apartheid era, or at least, you know, we were at least around, prior to apartheid being supposedly disbanded in South Africa. So, what's everybody's take on terms of how does apartheid, how did that contribute to South Africa becoming classified as a third world country?
Okay, so some of the research I came across was the actual term third world countries came during Cold War times, right? So it was originally coined in times of Cold War to distinguish those nations that are neither aligned with the West, NATO, nor with the East, the Communist bloc. So basically, to me, that just basically means that these are countries that neither East nor West have completely gained control over. So it's like these so-called established countries are, in essence, in a fight for those resources.
Right.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So all that being said, you could see how with apartheid was a situation where outsiders went into these countries and basically exploited the people. Took the resources, took control of the
At
land.
the Heat Coast, huh?
Right. Right. Exactly. Right. So I mean,
Make those connections. True indeed.
yeah, all that's a great thing about this show is like if you really are able to detect it, just about every show we do could be a continuing show. Everything's connected. So, but yeah, so it's really just about exploitation and control. And like I said, I understand it because when you think about where these individuals came from, there's probably the least amount of resources on the planet. Europe and things like that. So,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, no, I totally get that. What was I? Something happened, and I totally had enough of it, but I didn't feel like I had enough of it. And I can't remember what it is in particular. But then I was like, wow, I need to go get some more. But I totally had enough, right? But because I kind of felt this need, as if I didn't, I was like, well, this is one phone. Well, man, I need two phones, right? And then you have a phone too, I need another phone, right? And it was like this weird scarcity thing. And then I took a moment, I was like, I don't need, right? And like you said, it's the thing, what you need and what you want. And so you have to really separate that. And again, the culture of capitalism kind of blurs the line. And so a lot of people need to want something. And so there is no separation, right? They need to want something versus having a need and having a want.
Now, and it's interesting how we're always condemned and criticized in terms of our mentality in our neighborhoods where, crime is high and things of that nature. But again, all we are is we're reflecting what we learned in this culture, which is you take what you want. You get what you need, but you take what you want. And if that mentality is lived out and there's no righteous principles around it, then you have something called crime. I think the thing that I've learned over the years about apartheid, aside from the fact that the Dutch went into the interior of South Africa in the name of the Boers and they came through the Transvaal, one of the things that they sought to do was to establish their own independence in a country that was already owned and ruled. Yeah, independent. You could throw that in there. By black people. As time went on, of course, the three things that we say Europeans have always used: religion, guns, and drugs. One of the first two being the most prevalent that took place in South Africa, but the Europeans, in the name of the Boers, and later they called themselves Afrikaners. So that would be AFRIKAANEERS, if I'm not mistaken. They call themselves Afrikaners and lay claim to the land in South Africa after they successfully, along with the English crown, took over South Africa and subjugated the people in South Africa and imposed something known as apartheid, which led to them basically cutting up the country and reserving the best part. Man, the lessons just speak to you when you talk about this. They took the best part for themselves, right? And then they would eventually prevent black people in South Africa from entering into the best parts. And the only time they could enter those best parts or the wealthier areas was as house servants and things of that nature.
To work for
True indeed. So, I would encourage all of you to check out some writings or speeches from Steve Biko. Is a really good activist to look into. But in saying that, here we have apartheid contributing to murder and mayhem, the killing of men, women, and children. And we're talking about, if we were to break it down in a ratio, South Africans outnumbered the ruling whites 30-1.
Wow.
And how do you do that without a gun? So that of course, like we're saying, our consensus is that colonization or apartheid or imperialism and all those other terms, it comes under the same thing. Like you're contributing to destroying a country so that you can continue to call it a third world country, which in turn winds up being dependent on Western or white nations.
One thing I found funny was, there's actually different terms of third world countries or different types. So, for example, there's third world countries in terms of political rights and civil liberties. So that would consist of number 1 being Burma, 2 Cuba, Libya, North Korea, Somalia, Sudan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. So
some important names on that list.
Right. So if you've been paying attention to the news, definitely Cuba, Libya, North Korea, Somalia, and Sudan have been in the news.
Civil wars.
Right, so it's like these areas
started by us, though, right? I mean, I don't mean by us, but
it
started by America.
He means United States.
Yeah.
Started by us.
Yeah, right. No, but I mean, it's one of those things where if you're not in congruence, in agreement with how we get down, you're going to get put under the same umbrella as everybody else. And then that deems your land as land that we can come and take.
Right.
And we're going to obviously paint you as... paint your leaders as dictators and paint you as, evil, so that the group or the larger community of people, the American people, things of that nature, will get behind any movement to take over these different areas. So you've seen it in Libya with Gaddafi.
Right.
You hear the rumblings of North Korea. It's going, it's going down in the Sudan.
Dennis Rodman is over there. It's cool.
Oh, okay.
I feel safe.
Yeah. Somalia and Sudan, so I thought that was interesting. And then on the other side, you have third world countries in terms of the gross national income, which would be number 1, Timor-Leste, number 2, Malawi, 3, Somalia, 4, Congo, and 5, Tanzania. So, I don't want to get too long-winded, but that led me to do some research into some of the natural resources in these areas, these top 5. Timor-Leste is oil, gas. It's actually one of the 20 richest oil deposits in the world. But they're considered one of the poorest
of course.
countries in the world, right?
Until we get in there and tap it.
Right.
Malawi has all types of jewelry, agate, aquamarine, amethyst, garnet, basically all types of jewelry, uranium, coal, Somalia, uranium, and largely unexploited reserves of iron ore, tin, gypsum, copper, salt, petroleum in the Congo, timber. So basically, you can see these places have vast amounts of resources.
They're rich places.
Right. So basically, what they make you feel, just like they did with Manifest Destiny, and this is why we as people need to go back and research history. You see the symbolism. and what they did for before as it relates to what they're doing now, you could see how they coin a country as a third world country and make the American people feel like this country needs our help.
Right. Right.
Then we go in there and just exploit the people.
Right. Right. No doubt. I mean, you mentioned Libya and Gaddafi, right? So when you look at Libya, that was the second best place to live in the world when Gaddafi was alive.
Can you please repeat that last statement, God, about Libya?
Libya was the second best place to live in the world, right? And America, I want to say, was number 15 on that list. I kind of let go of that too soon. We're going to talk about that, but yeah, I mean, so you've got these places that are rich and great places. You have Gaddafi as a leader driving around the city,
just throwing gold at people.
Yeah, leaning out the top of his thing. Like, what was that? Jay-Z and Jermaine Dupri, right? Top down money. That was Gaddafi rolling through the city. Like, yeah, it's good. What's up? I'm Gaddafi, doing my thing. So, there's definitely that media, like we talk about, that media influence. You said, God, that they paint a picture of these places. I had a conversation with a friend, very intelligent. And I was like, Libya is the second best place to live in the world. He's like, they're poor. I was like, dude, Libya is the second best place to live in the world. Where do you get poor out of the second best place to live in the world?
Right.
And if they are poor, it's the second best place to live in the world. Right? So who cares if they're poor? Because you're still living in the second best place to live. And so, but he has this weird impression that Libya is poor and farmers don't have any money, whereas Gaddafi was like, oh, you just got married and you want to have a farm?
Right.
Here's some gold in a house. Go be a farmer.
Right. So same thing, applies with just about any country in Africa. Africa itself, people think that they don't even have cities and things of that nature. But truth be told, they have cities larger and greater than cities that we have here. They have 16-lane highways. And,
it's the Lorax. God. We live in this city with blankets on the side of it, and and we think that this is just what it is.
Right.
I think that would be the Truman Show too. You know what I mean? This was pretty deep. Wow. I mean, a lot of knowledge here. I wanted to throw this in the cipher in terms of our discussion about, what leads to a country being a third world country, and just a reminder to our listeners or our viewers that some of the countries that we've mentioned have been, quote unquote, poor, meaning the people in these countries that have all these natural resources that the whole world needs have been living in poverty for a really long time. I think one of the high post media sensations in terms of exploitation of third world countries has to be the blood diamond conflict. And it was mentioned to you, a really good movie to watch is called Bling. Repercussions and Consequences. I hope I'm saying that part of it right. Where the film by director Kareem Edward is talking a little bit about the conflict diamond. And again, for some people it's old news, and this is the thing that I think was really good about this show, is that what people think is old news is really not old news. It's just you don't see it in the media anymore, but that doesn't mean that it goes away. So when you throw a newspaper away, that doesn't mean the problem is done with.
No, that's real. That's real. Like that's like saying, people think, well, the '60s and things like that don't occur. People don't get lynched like that. Well, they just don't publicize it. Like there was a man in New Jersey that was found, a Kenyan man found hanging from a tree in New Jersey in the city. Right.
I remember hearing about that.
So
wow, New Jersey? You mean the same place that has put Assata Shakur at the top of the FBI's most wanted list?
Same place.
That New Jersey? Really? Wow. So something else there besides the poor righteous teachers. So I just wanted to just kind of throw that out there in terms of Sierra Leone and the conflict diamond. As beautiful as diamonds are, it's really good for us to sort of reiterate the idea of how diamonds are mined by the people of Sierra Leone. And if you watch, there are a bunch of documentaries out there. I mean, some of them have come out through the National Geographic, where they take you on a tour and they show you the miners and they talk to the miners. And believe it or not, the people who mine diamonds, first of all, they don't see the end result, that shiny thing
Right.
that Beyonce's wearing on her ears,
Right.
or that Russell Simmons and his wife
All up
may
in
be
his
promenading.
watch.
Yeah,
and-
true indeed.
Uh-huh.
And I'm gonna drop that
Okay.
controversial thing that my brother told me about Russell Simmons and him visiting one of the mines in Sierra Leone.
Cool. Okay.
But in essence, many of you just need to be aware that the conflict diamond was used to sort of created the civil war in Sierra Leone. That was one of the main things that the rebels were fighting to control, and the government was trying to get the upper hand. And unfortunately, they all kind of fell into the same hellish pit of just massacring one another. But here we are. We know that Africa produces, if I'm not mistaken, about 70 to 80% of the world's diamonds.
Wow.
And then you have Israel in the mix as well.
Okay.
However, even though these diamonds are being transported out of Africa, the people aren't benefiting from it.
Mhm.
The people that live around those mining areas are
They're not
extremely
rolling around
poor.
in Bentleys and,
No.
and thousands of diamonds in their watches and
No.
no.
I mean, and it's really sad, man. It's so unsettling when you watch these documentaries
Right.
and you see the miners, God, and you see like the major chasm that has been made in the earth, and them trying to extract these diamonds.
Right.
You just make the connection where this is pure exploitation.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there in terms of how do you think the world in general has responded to this exploitation that's taking place in terms of diamonds in Africa and Sierra Leone?
I would say there hasn't really been any response.
Mhm.
You know, I haven't seen any, outcries.
Right.
You don't see people standing in the freeway, blocking the freeway because of the blood diamonds.
Right,
So
right.
no, I haven't really seen any
Right.
situation.
Yeah. Not at all. Not at all, if any. I think that if it's not on the news or being publicized, I remember there was, what was that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio?
Blood diamond. Yeah.
There you go. Right. So there was blood diamonds, and then prior to that, when we were all a little bit younger, early teens, maybe a little younger, right? There was that thing in the news about blood diamonds and Africans pour them, right? And then that disappeared, right? So if it's not in the news and being publicized, people for the most part
Okay.
aren't really on it.
Right.
True indeed.
Well, it's not that they don't care. I won't say that, but it's just they're just unaware.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that we always establish through the Knowledge of Self radio show is that there's a pipeline. So if you go to a store like Zales, for example, and you decide you want to buy your wife to be a diamond ring, one of the things that kind of comes out or came out of our research is that once diamonds are transported out of places like Sierra Leone, the people who buy these diamonds have no idea that it may have come from a place that once had a civil war over these diamonds.
Right.
You don't really know who was controlling these diamonds before they were sold. So you are unknowingly contributing to, especially when the Civil War was going on, the death and the exploitation of black people in one part of the world.
Right.
I could say peace to Kanye West and Lupe Fiasco and Nas, because at least they did take it upon themselves to make some songs in regards to the conflict diamonds.
Right.
However, I just think just as people living in the West, people still continue to contribute to that same evil.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So I mean,
Well, even pardon me,
Uh-huh.
even buying products like phones and things like that also contribute. I think it's not just diamonds, and I think a lot of times we do get caught up in just in jewelry, but just about anything that we buy, the different minerals and pieces that make the equipment, like laptops and stuff like that, come from these areas where original people are living and being exploited. So
So since you said that's a great leadway or segue into what I was going to build about.
Okay.
But going there first, if you look up Foxconn right? So if you go to YouTube and type Foxconn, FOXCONN, right? You see many videos about this. It's basically a city within a city, and the people who work for Foxconn making iPhones and laptops, HP products, different Dell products, right, live within this city. And there's not very much entertainment in there. There's a swimming pool, and there's like 600 computers for a couple thousand people. And basically they get paid just enough to be able to live in that city. You pay your rent, and you get something to eat for the day, and that's really it. And these guys don't get paid enough money to do anything other than that, really. So if you look at, it's deep.
That is weird.
And
man.
then you have in a lot of these places too, which they don't tell you about, places like i.e. Foxconn, they have suicide nets. Yeah, it gets ill because people are like, man, this is ridiculous. In these places, no one. So let's say it's like a combine, right? And let's say the three of us shared a little small room, like not much bigger than like a jail prison, and all our stuff is in there. This is one room. I wouldn't know your name, you wouldn't know his name, we don't know anything about each other. Right? So you have that kind of sense of, catch my language, stuff is messed up, right? And not only that, but I don't have anyone to talk to about it, right? So it's one thing to be in a bad situation and then be like, oh, well, let me talk to my brother about it. It's another thing to be like, man, things are messed up and it's just me, right? And so they have suicide nets where they catch these people who try to kill themselves. Because they're just like, man, life is too ill.
I think a really good visual in terms of what the God is building on. I would encourage all of you. We encourage all of you to watch The Corporation. It's an extremely long movie, but it goes into a lot of the exploitation that has taken place around the world, and that vividly reminds me of some portions of that movie.
Wow, okay. We'll check that out.
That's deep.
Corporation. But so when you look at Indonesia, which is kind of dear to my heart, I do Indonesian Silat. So I like Indonesia. It's a cool spot. In any event, they have a lot of sweatshops in Indonesia. One of them, i.e., being Nike. And this facility is in the capital, and then just outside the capital is where they have these people live. And the difference between those two places, it's night and day, and night and day difference. And so these people, they had, there's a documentary on it actually. It's called Behind the Swoosh. And I forgot the guy's name, John. If you type in Behind the Swoosh, it'll pop up. In any event, he goes to Indonesia, him and another girl, and they want to live the life of a Nike sweatshop worker. Right, so a little background on him. He went to college and he became a professor, and then he went to St. John's to coach and teach. Within going to St. John's, they basically told him, "We got this huge contract from Nike, so you need to wear Nike stuff." And he had kind of done some, college student. And this is why I said they don't necessarily want people to be educated, right? Because here you have a college student who also happens to be a Catholic, and so he has those kind of belief systems about not wanting to hurt people and da-da-da. He does some research about certain things, leads him to find about sweatshops. And he's like, well, I'm not going to wear Nikes because of what happens to the people who have to make those products. That's not fair. And they basically told him, look, dude, you're either going to wear the Nikes because we got a $3 million contract with them and they're giving us all our stuff, or you quit. And they basically fired the dude. So then he goes over to Indonesia and lives like a sweatshop worker, for a month. Lost 25 pounds within the process. It's really deep. He at one point had to buy a razor, and a little small thing of shaving cream. He said, because I bought this disposable razor, which I can probably only use twice, maybe 3 times, I won't be able to eat for 3 days.
Wow. Well, I mean, and just to add on to that, I know we have a film for all of you to watch that we mentioned earlier. It's called The New Rulers of the World, and they give you a really deep discussion about the history of Indonesia, as well as the exploiters or the Western multinational companies that came in and not only instrumented or orchestrated a coup that took place in Indonesia, but the massacre of I believe it was hundreds of thousands of people,
Wow.
if I'm not mistaken. But it was all in the name of establishing the current market that the God is mentioning now, because the narrator of the documentary, the one, I guess he was responsible for kind of going in and getting the inside scoop. He went into some of these sweatshops and began interviewing the workers in Indonesia, and they talked about just, how little they were being paid every day, and he also showed how skilled the people who are supervising these sweatshops are in covering up the fact that they're overworking their workers, 18 hours a day.
Yeah, no doubt.
With the equivalent of 50 cents a day to work there.
Some of these people only make like $1.25 a day.
Unbelievable. So I mean, imagine living
you're
off
balling
of
at
that.
that point.
Yeah, man. I mean, we can make more recycling cans.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's real.
And, that's deep.
That's real.
To add on.
Oh no, I was just thinking about what he said as it relates to the city, or the condition of, say, the city versus where the actual workers live. I went to the Dominican a couple months back, Dominican Republic, and then I landed in Santo Domingo, which is a city a little bit of ways from the resort that I stayed at. So I landed in the city, so we had to get a cab and drive, through the city into the outskirts of the city, which was kind of more like country, but just to see how people lived. And basically, you had individuals who were really, really, really poor, and you could visibly see, based on the clothes that they had on and things of that nature. They seemed a lot happier, and their spirits seemed high, but that's maybe a topic for another show. But just to see that, and only see original people, no Caucasian people at all, and then you get to the resort, and it's just a complete switch over.
Wow.
So you got everything's lush, clean, and everything's very nice, and all you see is white people, except for the workers.
Except for the workers.
So
how you just talking about that?
Right. So how is the Dominican Republic being exploited? I mean, because I know it's similar to what Shaquille brought up about the sweatshops in Indonesia. So how is the Dominican Republic being exploited?
From what I did the knowledge to, you had certain corporations there, your Burger Kings, McDonald's, things of that nature. So quite naturally, individuals who don't have a whole lot of money, they're gonna probably eat at these types of places. So these places are making, probably millions of dollars off of just, people eating food that's killing them, But yeah, like I said, it was crazy because even when you get to the outskirts and you're in the actual more of the country, you see people living in shacks, built by hand type shacks,
Original people who strayed away from civilization.
Exactly.
The jungle way of life.
Yeah, so but that was eye opening to me.
Wow.
Just the contrast of things, you know what I mean? So.
Well, on that note, why don't we go ahead and take a break for a couple of minutes, and when we return, we'll continue talking about the exploited and the exploiters. Peace. Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge of Self radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace, Darkel Knowledge Allah.
Peace, Jarulullah.
And before we went out on break, we were talking a little bit about the exploited and the exploiters, specifically the sweatshops in Indonesia, and as well as the fast food restaurants and what's going on in the Dominican Republic. So, you know, the guy Jarul, he had mentioned that he had taken a trip to the Dominican Republic. So I just would like him to add on a little bit more extensively about some of the other things or other signs of exploitations of that country.
Yeah, another interesting thing that I saw was the majority of people who were in vehicles were on mopeds.
Mm.
So, you know, it's kind of like, what's this all about? So I asked, you know, taxi driver, he's like, well, gas is so high that no one can afford to really drive a car except for the, you know, the taxi drivers and things of that nature.
Right. Who are employed by other people.
Right. And then not only that, I lost my train of thought.
Taxi cabs, scooters. That's cool. Why you sit
Would
with
you
that
feel
one?
that the taxi cab drivers, I mean, were they making more than the average person that you may have spoken with or encountered in the Dominican Republic?
A little bit more. And one thing that I thought was interesting, speaking of exploitation, was that you know, I needed to work a little bit on my I guess you know, when you look at the financial chain, because they deal with pi there, or the not pi but the
Peso?
yeah, peso. Pardon me.
Wow, they deal with the peso.
Yeah, so they deal with the peso there. So you know, from the dollar to the peso, I was a little bit shaky on. So, you know, the dude could have really exploited me.
Right.
You know, because I had to stop at a bank, get some money. So, you know, he took me to this one spot, and he was like, there's certain spots you shouldn't go to because you're probably going to get robbed.
Wow.
So he was like, let me take you to the bank. And he basically sat there with me, and, you know, he kind of showed me, like, okay, this is how you know, the conversion rate and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I got it, but then I realized, wow, this dude could have really taken advantage of me.
Right.
So you could see how people who are exploited generally are getting exploited because they don't have that.
The lack of knowledge.
Well, the lack of knowledge, but they don't have that that demonizing trait within them to exploit others.
Right.
So they can't see
No doubt.
that others would exploit them to that level. So they
Yeah.
keep getting taken advantage of because of that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No doubt, for sure. Yeah, no doubt. Because you see people speak about, you know, things that are deemed conspiracy theories, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, well, there's no way that. Why would they do that? Why would the government do that?
Mm-hmm.
And people can't, like you said, people aren't inherently that evil.
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking of someone
Yes, they
doing
are.
something that evil, you know, it's like, wow, really? Would you really go through that lengths to do that just for that means? Like, I would never think to do that.
Sure.
And so,
I mean, and just taking it back to what Michael Bradley said, and because, you know, original people are kind of the people who've gone astray are in that whole mix where Michael Bradley said that if Caucasians can't run the world or rule the world, they'll destroy it. And that was what he based scientific research on and history and everything else.
that's deep.
So, I mean, just to kind of piggyback on what you said is that, you know, what I always tell my students when they say, well, why are they doing that? And it's real simple, because they're evil, you know, and they want more.
Right.
And they also have been, you know, slept in the bed with the capitalist culture, so to speak. You know, so, you know, it's just an interesting, like, I was just visualizing your trip, you know, and I know sometimes it kind of, you know, it kind of hits you deep in the heart when you see, you know, our people who sometimes they're so immune to the living conditions they live in. It takes an outsider to come in and be like, wow.
Stuff is effed up.
Yeah, man.
That's what that dude that I was talking about who went to Indonesia, that's what he said. When he went there, they have the sewer system is right outside your house in a little ditch that surrounds your house, basically. So, for one, when you go in the bathroom, you come back out and see what happened. And then for two, when it rains, that of course fills up with water and then floods in the street, which kind of floods into your house. So and then they have these big rats he's describing and fist-sized cockroaches that crawl over you at night. And he's like, wow, how do people live like this? But then, like you said, when you see the people there, they were so happy looking.
And that's what I was just going to touch on. Yeah, because it makes you think like America's kind of puts themselves in the forefront of we need to go help these people because they're living in such harsh conditions that there's no happiness and there's none of this and that. But like I said, when I went there, I've never been around such a happy group of people. So much so that I had a hard time actually leaving.
Right.
I was like, damn, I could really see myself living here. Like, not even based on anything, but just the warmth of the people and the connection. You could meet someone for the first time and they act like they've known you for 10, 20 years.
Right, right. Very hospitable.
Yeah. And not even on someone trying to get a tip or nothing like that, but just generally, genuinely happy and nice people. So.
Right. I would say people like that haven't been so impacted by Western culture in the sense that when they look at you, they see themselves. And I think that's how kind of original people, and they tell you that in movies, right? When you watch Avatar or the other version of Avatar, Samurai, Last Samurai, and then all those movies, right? When you see those original people, they were always cool, right? And then they took that dude and like, yeah, okay, man, come, we're cool like that. We'll help you out. And they always kind of have that heart. And then that goes back to what you're saying. Those kind of people don't. It's hard to think that someone would want to screw you over to that kind of extent. Going back to the sweatshops in Indonesia, those people had on hats that said Nike, proud to support Nike, because they really were. They were like, yo, we like to work. We're hardworking people, which is counter to what you hear over here in America, right? Lazy third worlders, don't want to work, don't want to do anything, miserable people. They're happy, hardworking people. And the guy's like, yeah, dude, I want to work. I love Nike. I want to support Nike. But why can't they just pay me what I need to live?
Right.
He goes, that's all I want. I want to be able to live. They showed that guy, the CEO of Nike, they showed what he makes his income to some of the people who work for him. And they were like, wow, this dude makes enough in a second to buy me a house.
Wow. And I think I just wanted to add on to what came out through both of your comments, is that many times when Western powers, specifically the United States, when they go into a country in the name of helping that country or rebuilding or building anything in that country, they're always trying to make that country like America. And I think the problem is that you need to consult the people and ask them how they want their country to look from their lens or their point of view. We don't need many Americas all over the world. We need or would like our people to live in conditions which are purely Indonesian or purely Dominican. Throwing a McDonald's in the Dominican Republic or throwing Nike, or if everyone is wearing Nike, that's not necessarily their sense of need or happiness, which is why you said, the people in these areas, unless we tell them otherwise, that's what they know. That's how they interpret their life. It's not until some of us go over there and poison their minds, well, you should have this, and this. Instead, we need to advocate that they build something from their cultural perspective instead of trying to make a mini mall saying, now you're civilized, you have a mall. Everybody has them. Every country has them.
Right. Not to mention you got your Planned Parenthoods in the Dominican also.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
In English or Spanish?
You know it's gonna be in Spanish. You know what I mean? They gotta make it accessible to the people.
Unbelievable! Right in your backyard, man. You fly to Jamaica, you're gonna see Cuba, and if I'm not mistaken, the Dominican Republic. It's deep. Hey, let's go ahead and this is a heavy show. We could be sitting here like 10 hours. I don't need to go to work. I'm still teaching. All right, check it out. One of the things I wanted to throw out there, was this idea of the civil war that had taken place in the Congo in regards to a mineral called coltan. So, and this you can visually see that we're all guilty, but again, this is the whole thing about exploitation is that you don't know that you're contributing to it until some insider scoop comes out, and coltan would be one of those things. Just to give you a brief background, coltan is a mineral that's found in the Congo, and it's used in things such as what? Laptops, cell phones, satellites, things that are attached to spaceships. Many of those things would not be operable without this this mineral. And when you look at some of the documentaries, one of which is called Blood Coltan, it just looks like a bunch of kind of black and white rocks. It doesn't look like anything. It's the equivalent of I don't know, like when you break down a wall and the plaster that's kind of left over, it kind of looks like that. But without this particular mineral being exploited from the Congo, right, we wouldn't be able to use our cell phones, and we wouldn't be able to make laptops. It just wouldn't work.
Wow.
You know, and to take you way back, one of the first things they exploited out of the Congo was rubber. They had like rubber plantations. So like your Goodyear was like one of the major corporations.
Really? That big fat white?
No, that's Michelin.
That's Michelin.
But you know, hey, they all sleep in bed with each other, man. Yeah. We know that's one of the sources of rubber. You know, has been for many years. So to add on, I mean, now we have this information about coltan and it being exploited and leading to the death of millions of people. They say about 4 million people over the last 5 years since this news came to the surface, you know, a couple of years ago.
So I mean, how many more before the news was to the surface?
Exactly. So how do we, you know, what can people do in regards to, you know, something that we actually need to use? Like, how do we teach people to not have a hand in this this type of exploitation of black people? This is a tough one, man. Because I have a laptop right here. You know, I don't own it, but I have a laptop.
I think the biggest thing is just, okay, if you have, you know, different things like cell phone, laptop, you don't need to buy the new one as soon as it drops.
Right.
You know, for example, I have a client who's obsessed with Apple products, so much so that she was actually dating an employee from Apple.
Wow. To get the hookup?
Right? So anytime a new Apple product comes out, she's getting it, you know? Doesn't matter. She doesn't even need to know what it does, but just because it's new, she's getting it. So, right. I think that lack of awareness is, you know, what's contributing to the overexploitation, because we just overdoing it, you know.
Right.
You don't need 2-3 phones and 4 laptops, you know what I mean? You can only use one at a time, so just stick with what you got.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point that you hit on, is that you should really stick with the one that you have, right? So if you have the iPhone 4, you don't need an iPhone 5 because your iPhone 4 still works, right? And the main purpose of it is to make phone calls. And so as long as it's doing what it's supposed to do, you don't need to waste money on buying another one. I think that's one real simple way off the bat where you can kind of hit them in the pockets.
Right, great comments, because one of the things that, again, it goes back to our previous discussion, you know, there's a pipeline in place. So up until now, or whenever you heard the news about how coltan, you know, people are killing one another in the Congo over this mineral so that they can make profits through Western multinational corporations who they must have this mineral in order to continue operating your Apples and everything else. The thing is that the documentary Blood Coltan, it brings out this idea of the pipeline, whereas the buyer, he or she is asked, so are you aware that this mineral, people are killing each other in the Congo or trying to control this mineral? But of course the buyer says, no, I'm not aware of that. You know, you actually don't know. who you're getting this from. Okay, so then there's this blind eye before the mineral leaves the shores of Africa, just like the conflict diamonds, and then you have it produced here in our technology and spaceships and things of that nature. One of the things that was interesting in this documentary is that there is a gentleman, and I'm saying that because I don't want to use certain words, but he is a former Tutsi leader and former member of the Rwandan Patriotic Front. His name is Laurent Nkunda. His last name is spelled Nkunda. And he was the one that is leading the effort against the Congolese army to control this. And now this is the thing.
Nkunda?
Nkunda, yeah. Nkunda.
Okay.
That's his name.
Okay.
So it must be familiar, yeah. Now, going back to Manifest Destiny, when the narrator went in, or the person doing the research went in to talk to him, he basically was talking about how one day he and his soldiers were sitting in a room and they got a divine revelation that they were supposed to, carry on this effort to, quote unquote, help his people. Whereas he's had a hand in a whole bunch of murders. Right. Just his soldiers around him. And he happens to be a Christian. And he took the interviewer, or the person filming the documentary, into a chapel, and he said, "This is where we worship." And I mean, again, the discussion, you guys watch that documentary and then go back to what these guys told you about Manifest Destiny. That's how it all comes full circle on the Knowledge of Self radio show.
Let's not forget, where are they getting these guns from? You got little pre-teens with AK-47s like you do in the neighborhoods that a lot of us live in America. Right. Where are these guns coming from?
Right. They definitely get shipped in,
Yeah, AFRICOM, they got this company called AFRICOM, so...
What's up with AFRICOM?
From my research, AFRICOM's a country, it's a gun manufacturing company, but what they do is a lot of the older weaponry that they're not necessarily using with the military anymore, they'll sell it to smaller governments who in turn give it to the children and mercenary groups and individuals who basically fight and kill each other.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I mean, that's what the CIA does, right? Their job is to go another place where America can be on the ground with troops directly, start an army, train them, give them money, and then send them on their way, right? Whereas, and I wish I would have brought that article, Saudi Arabia basically said that they're calling for everyone to stand with them and help fight against the Muslim Brotherhood and Al Qaeda, which is being fronted money by America. Yeah, because they're like, look, this is basically gonna destroy our land where we live at. So we need to all come together, because if they do this here, then it's going to affect everyone. And I think that's the biggest thing that people don't see. Didn't you read that quote where they came to kill all the, how did it go? They came to kill all the Jews, but I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't say anything. And then they came to kill these people, but I wasn't that, so I didn't say anything. But when they came to kill me, there was no one else there to stand up, to help me fight. And we have that same kind of mindset, right? Where we're like, well, it's happening over there, so whatever. But no, the reality is if they can do it to this one person or this group of people, then it can be done to you.
Right. And it's interesting that you bring that up, because I know one of the things that came out in one of Michael Moore's films is like Saudi Arabia apparently owns like 70% of the United States economy.
And Coca-Cola.
Well, there you go.
Which has aspartame that makes you fat and dumb. But
that you can use to clean car engines rather well and car parts. So, I mean, again, it always comes full circle on the show in terms of the exploiter and the exploited. One of the things I wanted to point out about the pipeline that we talked about, that we will continue to talk about on each show, is how all of these companies that knowingly or unknowingly, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt just to be funny, but these pipelines that we talk about where some mineral or diamond comes out of a war-torn country, winds up in the hands of Western multinational companies, and then there are subsidiary companies in operating in those countries, and then the mineral or the diamond winds up somewhere else. So one of the things that was brought out on Blood Colton was a couple of groups that have been associated with doing business with these people in these war-torn areas in the Congo for Colton. So one of the groups is called the Olive Group. You can look it up online. And the interesting thing is when I looked it up, I looked at the members of the board of the Olive Group. They're all Caucasians.
Wow.
Every single one of them. Exploiting the Congo. And then there was another company on there called Traxxas. They're formerly known as Umicore Sorghum. And they're like on this list of all these different companies that the United Nations put out as being supporters of, the conflict in these areas because they were buying coltan.
Right.
And
it benefits them to have those kind of things go down.
Man. So they know they're buying stuff during a war, and they're supporting a war effort.
Right.
Just like the Diamonds of Sierra Leone.
Right.
And one of the things that he brought up was that there was a link between Nokia and Motorola. And the whole idea of coltan being used by these companies to make their technology. But of course, they always deny it.
Right.
Why would the devil tell you the truth? That's why he's the devil.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, it's amazing when you get into the pipeline. I just thought it would probably be good for us to take a break, a couple of minutes, and when we come back at you, we'll talk about a third world country that you may know very well. Peace.
Peace.
Peace and welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace. Jakil Naja Allah.
Peace, Jarul Allah.
And before we went out on break, we were talking a little bit about the pipeline between the exploitation of our people in countries classified as the third world, and some of the underhanded tactics that leads to the murder and exploitation of original people around the world. So we wanted to pick it up with a brief discussion about what's going on in the Caribbean, specifically Jamaica and Haiti. And my brother Jarul gave you all a really good piece of insight about the Dominican, which is classified as a Caribbean country. So I wanted to just kind of open it up in terms of this idea of how capitalism and debt go hand in hand in regards to what's known as third world countries. So I just kind of wanted to open it up just through our observations. How is it that capitalism and the debt that some of these countries have to Western powers, how does that kind of go hand in hand from what all of you have observed or maybe researched over the years?
I think it's a control factor. If you can get a country in debt to you, then you have control over them. Just like we all as Americans go to college and get put in debt. Now we have to slave on that 9 to 5 to pay off all those loans and that debt. And we don't really have a whole bunch of economic independence until we pay off all those loans, And then what do? We end up getting another loan for whether it be a car, house, whatever the case may be. So we never can get out of that situation,
Right,
So.
right. Yeah, no, I see that. It's definitely a means to keep you at a certain spot. And although you may think that you have a lot of, again, the Lorax, right? You think that things are the way that they are, but it's not really that way. Like you said, you have your college debt, and then you got to buy a house because that's what they tell you, and then you got to buy a car, and then depending on what kind of job you have to buy a car that matches that kind of job, right? Like you can't be a doctor and roll up in a Toyota Corolla or something. People are going to look at you funny. You got to have a BMW or Mercedes. And so now that's another debt that you got to go into. And you got to have the trophy wife and then the trophy life and all this other stuff. And it's just things that people told you that you need, and that kind of keeps you at a certain spot in your life, chasing that American dream.
Yeah, so I think above all, it's if I'm the one striving to gain control, having individuals, whether it be people or countries, in debt, to me, that's something that I want.
Right.
I don't want them to pay off that debt because once it's paid off, now they don't owe me anything.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, no doubt. When we first started talking about that, I was thinking about the samurai movies, right? Where the person's like, oh, well, I'm indebted to you, and now I owe you my life.
Right.
And then, it's that kind of thing, whereas, America comes in or via the IMF says to a country, hey, I know you guys are hurting because we set it up for you to be hurting. Right? And we have the problem to your solution. We can loan you some money. And they're like, well, great. I'll gladly take a loan at what, like 5%, 10%? They're like, no, more like 22%.
Right.
And then they're like, what? I can never pay that back. And they're like, well, you could not take that loan and continue to be in hurt, or you could take the loan. And then when you take the loan, then they say, well, now that you had this loan, we would like to collect some of our money back from the loan. You're like, well, I don't have enough money to do that. And we're like, we've got the answer. You can take another loan to pay us back money for the loan that you owe us for.
Right.
And then, like you said, you have this thing where you're totally in debt. And then that's how they use that to control you, because they're like, well, not only did we give you this money, but because it's our money, you now have to use it this way. And so, like you said, it's you in control.
And, I can't think of a better part of the show to put that in based on what he said is that, and let's keep the Lorax within this context in terms of that was like an environmentally conscious cartoon. But in essence, what happens when agencies like the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank, what they do is they loan a country a whole bunch of money with a high interest, And when that country can't pay back several loans, as was mentioned, what they do is they are given the go to go in and begin setting up their own corporations and operating
Right.
to close to nothing.
Right.
Mhm.
And then what they do once they set up shop, they reach out to uh, the people in that country, the impoverished people, as cheap labor.
Mhm.
So those people are then hired or drawn in to work for these major corporations.
Did
which
they earn
again,
more
I'm blaming
gold?
them. No way. They do not earn more gold, right? No, the trader always disappears, right? So then, in essence, what ends up happening to the people who decide that they're not going to work for these companies, the farmers and people who have their own businesses, they find that the products that they're selling are being sold by these major companies. So then that levels the economy, and that's one of the things that I would encourage everyone to watch through a documentary called Life in Debt. It focuses on how the IMF and the World Bank has basically, or it continues to devalue um, the crops that are valued by Jamaican farmers. And not only that, but just those who had been producing milk prior to them coming into this
Right.
debt through the
Right.
IMF, they no longer can sell their products on the market and make anything from them.
Right.
Because now, when the IMF comes in and these companies come in with them, it devalues the national product that a lot of these people have relied on for many, many years.
Right. And don't forget that they're also telling these people like,
Mhm.
you can't do business with certain people, or
Oh yeah.
if a farmer chooses not to get down with you and he or she needs a loan,
Mhm.
then and oftentimes it's okay. Well, screw it. You can't give them a loan,
Mhm.
and or okay, if you give them a loan, they need to pay this high interest rate.
Mhm.
And then the farmer's like, well, I can't pay that.
Mhm.
And, well, then I don't know what to tell you, buddy. And now
Right.
he's out of business.
And I mean it's ironic in history because if for those of you who, like I said on previous show, those of you who wore the Che Guevara T-shirt but you didn't read his speeches, shame on you, because one of the things he did mention, he had a speech where he was talking about uh, the early or humble beginnings of what we're talking about now, where um, the banana trade and your major banana companies,
Chiquito.
right? They were being taken over by these corporations, but at the same time, when those Chiquita and all those other banana companies went in, what they did was they basically kicked the indigenous people out of that production or
Right.
controlling that, man.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
go watch the propaganda show that we did, and there's a brief history about how that all transpired with Edward Bernays and the whole propaganda
Right.
with communism and things of that nature. So definitely watch that one.
Mm.
You remember?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah.
It's intense. So what can we say about Mexico in terms of this whole exploitation? I mean, I know you frequented Mexico. I haven't been there for many, many years. What could you tell the people in terms of exploitation and how it looks in a place like Mexico?
Man, what's ill though is places in Mexico. Some of them don't look that much different than places here in LA.
Mhm.
That's one thing that I found to be pretty crazy because America being the great power and the supreme thing that it is, you go to another country and you're like, whoa, that looks like East LA, or that looks like this place. What's the difference,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, that's one thing I saw off the back. You see people who are impoverished, poor. My money did go a little bit farther in America, in Mexico. Not so much as it does now. It's evened out, so you don't get the same return on your money. Whereas you could buy, $5 will let you eat like a king, and now they're like, well, do you have pesos? And I'm like, no, but I have American money. They're like, no, but do you have pesos? Right? I'm sure you might have experienced that
same
too.
thing,
They're
same
like,
thing.
they don't want your American money.
Yeah.
So it's ill like that. Just poor wages, poor people, slum areas, and you go into like the major city areas where you see the big corporations like the DuPont brothers that they own, because they kind of run in Mexico like that. Those areas where those companies are in look very nice,
Mhm.
but like we said, the places where the people live at are the poor, impoverished places.
And then what is that? There's a trend that develops from that situation is that people living in impoverished communities see the propaganda of America as the land that you go to where you
fix
can
that.
fix your situation. They
Right.
come here and then they get further exploited because they're illegal, right? And they get these jobs where the employer, who basically you have these individuals in debt, but a different kind of debt, but they're in debt to you because if the worker says, okay, I want to get paid more, they could very easily say, well, I'm gonna report you.
Right.
So you just get exploited from that way. You know what I
Right.
mean? So it's just
And it's a complicated
vicious
system
cycle. Yeah.
because they use those same people to further, and maybe this is going a little ahead, but in America, that has a certain kind of weight that it puts on the American economy, right? Where you have people coming in for low wages, doing certain things, and then that drives down the depreciation. So other people have to lower themselves to compete with that standard too.
No, I mean that's right on the heels of our next discussion, and I just want to throw in there in terms of what you said about the labor that comes in when the then President Bill Clinton proposed the North American Free Trade Agreement.
Right.
What it did was it led to the loss of several thousand jobs in the United States.
I mean,
Right, he was one of
the first black
people-
president.
The first black president. Don't he live in Harlem?
I can't believe that.
Don't he live in
I
Harlem?
think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Man.
And
So-
that's pretty black.
Him underwriting that, it led to thousands of jobs, quote unquote, being sent to Mexico, which again creates that conflict. You know.
Right.
However, according to our research, there's a interesting article titled "International Forum on Globalization: Exposing the Myth of Free Trade," published February 25th, 2003, where it talks about how in 2002, Mexico lost about 1.3 million farm jobs. So that would be about 8 years
Wow.
later
Wow.
after NAFTA was passed.
Right.
And more than that, farmers were the ones that suffered the most from what ended up happening because through NAFTA, when it was passed, it lowered the taxes on goods that were being exported out of Mexico.
For sure.
And I mean, they were saying that companies were making like billions of dollars, man. As soon as they passed NAFTA,
Yeah.
they were just driving down there real quick.
Yeah.
And they were making mega profits. But now here we are. It goes back to what the guy just said in terms of Mexico. Same in the Dominican Republic is that, when these countries or these big capitalist countries say, hey, we're going to do this for the benefit and welfare of your company, really they're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
All they're doing is just they want to create fertile ground to where they can operate their huge corporations
Right.
for less money
Right.
and pay the people that work in those corporations less money,
Right.
which leads to equal profits. So our next discussion, I wanted Jaquil to go in on this one, but you have mentioned that there was another third world country that we failed to mention. So let's go in on that one.
Yes. And that third world country is America. As I mentioned, and I've been to a few different places outside of America that are, considered third worldish. And they don't look that much different than America. And when you look at the definition that we read earlier in the show of what a third world country is, that definitely fits what you can consider America to be, as far as the the economic situation, the healthcare situation, the amount of diseases that are running rampant, the communities where many people are living in are very run down. Like you said, you look at some of these cities in other places where they have the big corporation, and that's a nice place, and then where the people live is the poor place.
Mhm.
That's mirrored in America, right? Where you have where the big corporations are a little nicer areas, and then where a lot of the people who live in those places or work in those corporations don't live
Right.
in those same nice
I
places.
mean, a really good example of what you're saying is Walmart, and some of the protests that took place out here in the city of Inglewood.
Mhm.
And we encourage you to watch any documentary about Walmart, because
That's the devil, right there.
I mean, you know, hey man, you want to know if the devil's alive? Watch some documentaries on Walmart. In essence, you know, it's been shown that anywhere that Walmart operates, they basically level the local economy,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes business. They take business away from your mom and pop shops that have been
Yeah.
around for 25, 30 years.
Right.
No, more than that, they exploit the land as well.
Yeah. No, like you said, and you mentioned Inglewood, and that's a great mention as far as Walmart is related. So they wanted to open up a superstore. Um, and like you said, Walmart has this thing where when they come into an area, and this is what the problem was in Inglewood, that they write laws in which that they want to own that space, right? So they have it in the contract. Okay, if we open up a Walmart here, not only do we have a Walmart, but we get to control what businesses come in.
Wow,
behind it,
really?
Right, what businesses can be there, and if you can open a business, what area can it be in? And so Inglewood, right, was like, well, we're not going to let that happen because we've seen what Walmart does. Like you said,
Right.
all mom and pop places shut down because you can't compete with those low prices.
Mm-hmm.
And so Walmart, Inglewood fought to keep Walmart out of Inglewood,
Wow.
thus saving small businesses and
That's
stuff
beautiful.
like that. Yeah.
And there are quite a few. I was just driving through Inglewood yesterday. There's quite a few mom and pop shops still, relevant and existing. So that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful thing. One thing I wanted to definitely build on as it relates to the definition that we gave you as it relates to what a third world country is in the beginning of the show. The things that stood out to me the most was the poor unstable government, population growth, illiteracy, and disease. So when you look at some of the statistics, I was looking at statistics that dealt with these four things here. So the unemployment rate as of May 2013 in America is 7.6%. So 7.6% of the 316 million people, or plus people that live in America right now, are unemployed.
Hmm.
And if I can add on, generally, black people's unemployment rate is double or triple that the
Word.
national average.
Right.
That's a damn shame.
That's a damn shame. The poor unstable government part. When you look at a lot of the local economies that are taking money out of the school systems, and you're taking money out of the different things that deal with the future of any community, you could see that that's dealing with the poor aspect. Population growth says a baby in America is born every 8 seconds, so
Wow.
quite naturally that's dealing with a lot of population growth. Literacy, 14% of Americans can't read or write, which is a high number.
Not to cut your wisdom, going back to the baby born, would you say every
8 seconds.
8 seconds?
Mhm.
Yeah.
They just recently increased what they are calling the abortion stage or period to 3 years.
Hold on. Say it again.
They are increasing attempting to increase the amount of time in which you can technically abort a child.
3 years?
3 years, yes. I mean, after your child is born out of the womb, and it's got a name, and it's meant different people in your family, and it's been in your house, you can still be like, yeah, I think go on my child. Population control, Agenda 21.
Right, so that's why you see population growth as such a relevant thing with the third world, because let's be honest, one of the biggest things on the agenda right now is to bring down the population.
Right.
And it's not necessarily the whole population. It's more of a certain segment of the population, the people who are existing at the highest frequency, which would be black, brown, yellow people, and the people who have a tendency to procreate at a higher rate than others. So you could see that.
Which I find interesting. When you look at certain statistics, it says that people who make a lot more money have less children.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really wanted to control the population, you just start giving people, more money. Here, dude, have some more cash. Right. I mean, it's fiat money, right? It's not backed by anything anyway. So you just print some more out and give it to the people. Just stop having babies. Simple, problem solved.
Right. One of the things just in our research that came out is there's a list of 10 countries that are considered the poorest in the Union. Number one is Mississippi. So if you live in the state of Mississippi, your median income is about $36,000 a year. On down to South Carolina, being the seventh poorest state in the Union. Median income is about $42,000 a year.
Wow.
And then number 10 is North Carolina. And I mean, again, we don't, because the guy Jaquil, when we were finished planning, he was just like, well, parts of the United States, and now we're seeing that states would be considered, the equivalent of third world countries.
Right.
And what do you see, though?
What do you see?
You see gentrification a lot of times.
True indeed.
Yeah.
Outside companies coming in
Mm-hmm.
and saying, we're going to help your community. This is going to bring more life and vibrancy to your community.
We're going to open a Walmart over here and save your community.
Right. And then they further blood suck the people in those communities,
So they make quadruple than what they're going to pay the people to work as cheap labor.
Right.
And I'm glad that you had thrown that into the discussion so we could add it on. Is that when many of us we go out and about, we're out here in Levallois, Los Angeles, we grew up in a lot of these poor parts, and we get immune to is just say, this is the hood. We go here, we operate here, and we do what we have to do. However, we sometimes have to stop and think about the injustice, essentially, like why are all the communities that our people live in poor, in terms of access to resources.
Because that's what it is. That's what it's about, the access, the opportunities. You know what I mean? There's not a whole lot of opportunities for employment. You go outside, you see fast food restaurants. You're seeing less grocery stores and things to work at, but there's not a whole lot of places in your neighborhood that you can work at. So quite naturally, it's going to be harder for you to be employed and make a substantial amount of income. One other thing that was interesting to me as it relates to the disease portion, the cancer rate in the U.S. is the seventh highest in the world.
Unbelievable.
So we're supposedly so advanced when it comes to the medical sciences and things of that nature, but we're still the seventh highest in cancer in the world.
Yeah. I want to say in healthcare, America is like the 15th, 16th best nation as far as healthcare. Which, again,
do you know what they are in the military?
I want to say number one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think we've got the biggest military and the biggest budget for military spending.
Interesting.
Go America.
Right. And they're staunch supporters of Israel, who also has one of the best armies in the field on the planet.
They should. A lot of our money goes to make sure that is one of the best armies in the field.
Oh yeah, there you go. Well, I wanted to. Why don't we go into the do, the view, and the read as we do on every show? So I wanted Jarul to spearhead that one.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and what we'd like you to do is just boycott a company that manufactures a product you really don't need. So just start really assessing your lifestyle and looking at the things that you really don't need. Like I said, if you have 2 feet, that means you can only wear 2 shoes at a time. So you don't need all the Jordans.
Right.
Just get one pair. Once they get holes in them or something like that, get some new ones.
And if you're really on it like that, then Punky Brewster it. You know what I mean? Where the left shoe this Nike and the right shoe this Nike. If you really need to have that many pair of shoes at one time.
Oh man.
I guess I'll do the View.
Sure.
As far as View, we like you to check out Life and Debt, Blood Cotan, and then one I like you to check out is Behind the Swoosh, and that's that Nike documentary that I was referring to.
I gotta
Set
check
up
that
on
out.
YouTube. Yeah, it's real quick, like 20 minutes, but very deep, powerful documentary.
And one thing that you should read, it's called The Debt, What America Owes to Blacks by Randall Robinson. And before we close, I did want to hit you with some lyrics.
Okay. You need a beat?
Oh, no, because I'm just going to read it. But, I'll tell y'all, check out Immortal Technique.
Yes.
He has some really good music in terms of the messages he's trying to send about, much of what we talked about today.
Yes, sir. Before you do that, let me say
ahead,
you need to balance some Immortal Technique with like some jazz
Yeah.
or something else because he will have you, a little turned up. So just make sure that
If you listen to him, do it at the gym so you can move some weight to get the stress out.
Right. To get
Don't hurt yourself. All right. With that being said, he wrote a song called Third World. Actually, it was on the self-entitled album Third World. And he says, I'm from where the gold and diamonds are ripped from the earth, right next to the slave castles where the water is cursed. From where police brutality is not half as nice, it makes the hood in America look like paradise. Compared to the AIDS-infested Caribbean slum, African streets where the passport's an American gun. From where they massacre people and try to keep it quiet and spend the next 25 years trying to deny it. I'm from where they cut your hands off if you make a fist, and niggas grow cocoa because the job market doesn't exist, except slave labor modern day companies store, and peacekeepers don't ever come here no more.
Wow.
That's deep.
It's a deep song, man.
That's deep.
Y'all love it.
Yeah.
I would like to thank my brothers. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace. Jaquil Allah.
Peace. Jarullah. Thanks for tuning in.
True indeed. And we'll see you next week. Knowledge Yourself Radio Show. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.